Annyeong, it's Mikey here, and today we're coming back with another keyboard video. This one is going to be a Hall Effect keyboard, which Keebforce sent out to me. Took a little bit of time to get to this one because I had my trip, and this just arrived a little bit late before I actually left on my trip. Now, I'm actually excited about this one. It's with Everglide, and I've heard Everglide's PCBs are one of the best performing PCBs out there, so we have to take a look at this, see how this is actually going to be, how does it sound, and how does it work in gaming, and would this be a board that you would be interested in. So let's go straight into unboxing, but please make sure to like and subscribe. Now introducing the Keepforce X Everglide AE68 Pro. Now this is going to be a collaboration keyboard, which I am actually very curious about because I've heard a lot of good things about Everglide's Hall Effect PCBs. Now overall, the cable that you get and the keycap or switch pillar are not going to be like your best amazing things. It's not going to be the highest quality, but the cable is actually pretty thick and actually very long, very decent. The overall packaging, I would say they did a very decent job. It doesn't feel like it's a cheap packaging, but it doesn't feel as premium as say some of the other brands out there. But overall, the keyboard itself feels very nice. It's a full aluminum case, and I think overall they did a great job with the specific board. It does remind me of the Lucky 65. The keycaps are PC, the transparent keycaps, which I'm not a big fan of, but I've heard RGB is a big thing for gamers, so I understand it. But the whole weight of this keyboard is going to be 1.2 kgs, and let's hear a sound test. Now time to do a teardown. So we're going to open this up. There's only 4 screws that you need to remove to take it off. But as you can really see, the back of the board really reminds you of the Lucky 65. And it actually looks almost like a copper weight that looks really cool. So we remove the top casing and then we can remove the PCB. Now the PCB is on top of a plastic, which is actually going to be where the LED comes out on the sides. So this board has LED shining everywhere, like on top and the sides and the back, everywhere, which is really cool. And as you can see, it is gasket mounted. Now the interesting thing about this gasket mount is what they're using to do the gasket mount. It actually feels very like a gummy material, which is kind of interesting. Now it's not like a silicone, which is a little bit thicker. It feels a lot softer, and you can really see it here where if I bend it and move it, it really does squish very easily. So a very interesting material that it was used in terms of the actual gasket mount compared to say a lot of the other things that I've tried out there, which is usually a silicone based thing. Now in terms of the measurements, so we get a 1.6mm plate and then a 1.5mm PCB, and this is the carbon fiber plate version with the Wukong switches. Now in terms of the actual stabilizers, it's going to be plate mounted stabilizers, and they're not really well lubed, but surprisingly enough, you're not going to get a ton of ticking from them. It's just an interesting thing that I noticed with it, where it is plate mounted with very little lube that's actually inside them, inside the stabilizer portion, or even the connection point in the wires. Now, I do think it's still great to add some lube in them, which will hopefully help with the overall feel of the stabilizers themselves. Now the USB port is actually connected to the PCB, and then you saw the chip there, and there is going to be a layer of PT sheet in there as well as the foam, and then a foam on the bottom of the case. So you have multiple layers of foam in this board, but overall the stock sound was not great. I'm gonna be honest with you, I really thought it could have been better, but this is what we're going to be dealing with this specific board. Now going into the modding of the board, so we're going to use tape to do a tape mod on the back, which just keep in mind that some PCBs are not going to be covered under warranty if you do so. So this is just me giving you guys an idea of what it could sound like with the modding, which is 2 layers of tape, which I will link in the description that you can grab. It's just painter's tape, which is very simple to use. And then we're going to put it all together. So very easy to put together. You're just going to put in the screws back. Now the shorter screw should be in the front side where the spacebar is, and then the longer screw in the back side. And make sure you do the corners first, just because of the way that this board is going to be with the case not fully sticking in and moving around a little bit. Now in terms of the stabilizers, as you can see here, I use a syringe. It just helps a lot with how I can lube them and make it better. But let's do a sound test. So we did the whole teardown, modding, lubing of the switches. So we heard the stock, we heard the lubed, and then the modded. I think the modded obviously sounds the best, but I would say you have to lube these switches. Now in terms of the sound overall, the stock switches were not the greatest. It had a little bit too much rattling noises. Didn't sound very nice, I'm gonna be honest with you. It does feel stable because of how big the stem is, but I really like sound, and that's one of the things that brought me into this hobby of keyboards, is the fact that I like how things sound, and this one really requires some lubing. And I would even say light lubing. You're actually gonna have to do a little bit more than that for this, like a little bit more of a heavy lube for these switches. Then it actually sounds a lot better. And then of course, modding it just helps a little bit more, but always be careful when you do mod things. Like tape mods aren't always the best thing to right away do, because warranties might not be covered depending on what breaks. So just be careful when you do those things. I think overall the quality of the case is quite good, and it's very easy to take apart, as you guys would have saw. They did a great job with the whole design of this, and I think overall I did like how it came out afterwards. But it does take some work, so keep in mind, like lubing switches, if it's your first time, it's gonna take you hours. Take your time with it and make sure you do it evenly on all switches, because if you don't, some switches might not sound the same or feel the same for you. Now we're gonna have to go a little bit more in depth with this, check out the software, the gaming, and more checks on that. So let's go right into it. So overall findings, I think that the case is very, very well done. It's a nice aluminum with a nice CNC and anodizing on there, so it feels very smooth. You do get all this lighting around the sides and the back and everywhere, and the back weight looks really nice, and overall it feels like a nice pre-built mechanical keyboard, but in an HE feel. Now if you do the tape mod, keep in mind the USB port might not be fully aligned, so that's something to keep in mind for yourselves. This Wukong switch is actually very, very stable with like no movement at all, which is really, really nice. And overall I would recommend lubing them, because if you don't, they're not going to be the nicest sounding switches. Lubing really does fix it a lot. Now as you can see with the backlighting, it is incredibly bright. The Wukong switches overall are going to be transparent, which makes it really, really nice with the lighting, and you're going to have very accurate lighting. And you can see here, you do get like a lot of cool things with the lighting of this board. It is super, super bright, and it will light up your room for sure. Now, of course, we're going to go straight into the gaming portion. So using the keyboard itself, now using super glides and everything in Apex Legends, it was very easy to set up. Now keep in mind this, why I play Apex Legends and use a Hall effect keyboard is because of super gliding, and the timing that requires that is specifically very, very frame perfect, and Hall effect keyboards just make it a lot easier. So you can do a lot of cool movement tech with Hall effect switches in a keyboard and be able to just master the timing of it much easier. It just is much easier to do when you have actuation settings instead of having to time it yourself with how you press a key, because Super gliding requires you to press crouch and space at the same time, and it's just something that's not super easy to do. Another benefit of Hall Effect is that in Apex Legends, you can actually do a little bit of recoil smoothing with them. So if you move in Apex Legends, there should be some recoil smoothing, which you don't have to control the recoil as heavily. But if you use a Hall Effect keyboard and you spam AD very fast, you can also get a bit of that recoil smoothing as well. So these are things that I found are benefits of Hall Effect. And I don't play games like Valorant or CS, so I don't use SOCD as much, but those are things, of course, that I should really get into to show you guys how it works well. But I do show you guys a bit of Valorant as well to know that it works on the specific keyboard. But overall, even for the specific one, I felt that the performance was quite good. Like the latency, I didn't feel anything, and I was able to really pull off certain things and certain movements that I felt is important to use while I'm gaming in Apex. Now, this is Valorant and using SOCD. So you can see here that it is working well with the movement wise. So how it works is if I'm pressing A and then I press D last, it should go off with the last key input. So even if I'm holding A at the same time as I press D after, it should still have my movement going there. Now keep in mind, this doesn't make you a professional gamer in any way. All it does is gives you a little bit of a benefit, but you do have to practice that in between moments, because as you can see here, I'm missing shots because it's not lining up, because the moment I move, the shot is going to go flying into a different direction. That is how most shooting games will work, like CS or Valorant. So you have to manage that exact braking moment to be able to get your shot off exactly where you want it to be in terms of accuracy. So this is something that's also going to require practice. And I was trying Neon here to do a little bit of movement to see how it was like using the keyboard, and it does work quite well. It was really fun to try with a specific one. Now, in terms of pricing, so I got the Pro variant with the aluminum casing. It goes up in terms of pricing, so you can have the alu version or the CF version, which is the carbon fiber, and there's also different switches available, and the pricing will change from there. So you're looking from like $110 to $120 in terms of what you can get with the specific board. I think the pricing wise, it is a very, very good price, especially for what you're getting with this board. The overall value you get with the aluminum casing and everything, it is actually quite impressive, especially with the type of switches that's inside of this keyboard as well. You have to keep in mind that like the Wukong switches, if you buy them separately, can get to like $60 on like AliExpress. Sometimes you can get cheaper. And then, of course, getting a case and PCB, all those things add up very, very quickly. You can really see here that it has a lot of good performance to it. It's supposed to have the 8K polling rate and a high scanning rate, which is supposed to reduce the overall latency. And I really heard a lot of good things about Everglide's PCBs being one of the highest performing PCBs out there. Honestly, it's kind of surprising to hear all these different PCBs, especially because I don't have the exact tools to test all the latency. I would love to be able to invest in one in the future just so I can test and see, what PCBs are really the best out there. But to be fair, I'm gonna be honest, when you get to the 8K point, human being reaction time, it's not really going to be able to tell the difference with the very, very small amount of change in terms of the latency between PCBs, especially at 8K. So just keep in mind this for yourselves when all these marketing brands are saying like high, big numbers. Now, you do have calibration available, has a lot of different switches available that you can see. I would say if your switch is not listed in there, then just calibrate with the travel that you specifically have on your switch so you can be able to tell which is used. And you can even tell by traveling here and using the travel test so that you can know how far the travel is on your switch. Now, you can see they have a ton of different lighting choices here. You can make many different changes, which is very, very cool. And it is incredibly bright. I also love the fact that the software shows you what lighting there are. And this is the other section. So this is actually going to be the lighting that goes around your keyboard. So you can see that it's cut off there, not like the keys. And that's what you can use to change the lighting of your keyboard. And you can even make it a single color so that you can just be able to see one specific lighting instead of having like multiple RGB going off at the same time. I actually felt that the purple looked the nicest and coolest on my desk for the specific board in terms of the surrounding light in the keyboard itself. And then I actually changed the setting in terms of the keyboard lighting to be a little bit more on the lighter white color, because I just like white lighting the most in terms of my keyboards than anything else for the keys. So That's just my personal preference, but of course everyone has their own. Just do what you like the most. Now, in terms of the custom keys, I'm very, very glad that they have all these custom keys available, and they even have the profiles available as well. So you actually have profiles, which is super important. I say this to every brand out there that doesn't have profiles available. You need to have profiles as a mandatory thing in your Hall Effect gaming keyboard. The reason being, your gaming setup and the way that you set your actuations is not going to be the same as your typing. Most keyboards should be set around the I would say even higher, 1.5 to 2 millimeters actuation for typing, even if you're a fast typer. The reason being is the 1 millimeters is actually very, very low actuation, which makes it very, very difficult to type on this thing. And you're going to make a lot of typing mistakes if you do so. So keep in mind these parts. Now, in terms of advanced keys here, you can go in and set up your SOCD. You also have dynamic keystroke. You also have mod tab and toggle. You have many different actuations that you can choose here, as well as different settings that you can choose for the specific games that you're wanting. And you even get macros, which is awesome. You can even go into my config and save the profiles that you like here. And then you can also do updates in the update manager, which is really great as well. Overall, I have to say that they did a great job with this specific software. It still feels like a bit outdated in terms of the UI, which I think that would be great if they updated in the future, but it does have all the basics that you need, and it's not too difficult to use either. Now you can see here it has the AK polling rate, which is really good to see, and it's actually pulling more accurate numbers. Sometimes you'll see very, very high numbers when you're testing it because of the scan rate, but this one I'm happy to see that it's a little bit more accurate with the numbers. Now I also want to test one more thing to make sure that this was working. It's to see if I change it to 1 kilohertz, will it change to 1K? The reason I like to test this is because some boards out there don't actually change when you are changing it in the settings, and some people's computers just can't handle 8K. So it's important that these keyboards can do it, and from testing this one, you're able to do it. So you can have peace of mind if you have a computer that's a little bit older and cannot handle 8K. Now, going into the comparison sheet, you can really see here that at 65% with like aluminum casing and a decent software, this keyboard really lines up with the competition that's available. I would say that this board, they priced it quite well right now, especially because it's on sale. But I think with what you're getting with this board, with like the performance and the software and the quality of build, it's not too bad. You're actually getting a very good value out of it. The stock sound of the Switch is not going to be the greatest. I'm going to be honest with you. You need to lube the switches. You need to put some work to make it sound actually decent, but overall, not too bad. Software as well, it might seem a little bit outdated, but I think overall, you still get everything you need in it, which is perfect, and you can make the settings and changes that you need for the specific board, which is very, very good for a Hall Effect board. Now, we've come back from comparing this board with different ones in the market with like competition, my thoughts on this, and for those out there that are curious if this is something you should look at. Now, if you're wanting specifically a nice aluminum case, so I'd say the CNC on this thing is really well done, and it kind of feels like a Lucky 65 almost in terms of the case wise, but with a little bit of extra touch to it. If you're looking for something that has good performance, decent software, and overall can really be stable in terms of the switches, so like not rattling or things like that or movement, you can take a look at this specific board. Now, obviously there's a lot of different boards out there. Now, if you don't want to really customize your board a lot, like build it yourself, buy a case, buy a PCB, buy a switch, and then buy keycaps for it, this is something you might want to look at, right? A pre-built board that actually can just straight out of the box use it. This is something you could definitely take a look, especially if you are someone who does want the arrow keys. This is something that could actually work for you. Now, of course, if you're trying to use like the function keys F1 to F12, this board is going to be a bit harder because obviously the function key is going to be on the right. Unless you have really, really large hands, it's definitely going to be hard to reach. So keep in mind those things for this specific board. That's why I do like a 60% with a split spacebar, just because it's just easier to map it that way. But if you are someone that doesn't need that at all and you like 65%, so something with a little bit less, space on your desk, this is going to be something that you can use, especially if you do need your arrow keys. I'll have the links in the description. You can go check it out for yourselves, but please check out the other videos I got. and I'll have to catch you guys next time.